Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a glorious Prescott Hill Climb. Prescott in the spring is just perfect with all the blossom on the trees. We're blessed with an absolutely dry track, so a really interesting afternoon of hill climbing. Welcome if you're listening. Well, obviously you're listening at home, but whether that home is in the UK or in some far-flung part of the world, if you're in Australia, what is it? Middle of the night, you should be in bed. Anyway, welcome. We've had a morning of practice for tomorrow's meeting, although we have got some competition later on this afternoon, but you join us halfway through practice, the second practice runs for competitors in the Midland Hill Climb Championship, which takes place all through the year and is sponsored by BMTR, and it includes a top 12 which is sponsored by Wind Developments. We should have had the first round of the British Hill Climb Championship this weekend, but sadly Scotland had their own rules and still don't allow people to drive from Scotland down to England. So had we had the first round of the championship, the British Championship, this weekend here, we would not have had our current champion, Wallace Mingies, and that would have been completely unfair. So I think quite rightly, the start of the British Championship has been delayed for a couple of weeks and will take place at Lowton Park. Nice view of Prescott just beyond the start line. If you haven't seen Prescott Hill Climb before, let me tell you, we're based in the middle of the UK, slightly to the west near the city of Cheltenham, and the hill climb has been here since 1938. If we can travel up the hill a bit, we'll just describe the hill. You saw the bridge, which is about 400 yards, 300 or 400 yards from the start line, and we've got a speed trap just past the bridge, and the fastest speed I've seen recorded through that trap so far is 113 miles an hour by Will Hall last year. But it's a pretty quick corner you're seeing on the screen now. That's Orchard Corner, a sweeping left-hander. You can see the track going off to the right, and that in fact was the original Prescott Hill Climb course, developed by the Vintage Sports Car Club and then the Bugatti Owners Club, who owned the estate. And but in 1959, the club extended the course by sweeping round the left-hander at Orchard and up to a hairpin bend called Ettores. And we've actually got a camera, can see the Ettores hairpin in the distance. Ettore Bugatti, of course, being Mr. Bugatti, who designed and developed and ran the company until, sadly, its demise just after the Second World War. But Prescott is owned by the Bugatti Owners Club and is, if you like, the shrine of Bugatti interest in the UK. So it's a hill climb, but out of Ettores the cars go down a little dip, so build up a good head of speed up to a left-hander in the front of your screen now, which is called Pardon. And there are lots of arguments about the best way to go around Pardon hairpin. And on the outside of the hairpin, in the foreground, you can see what we call the kitty litter, which if cars do go into that, they stop fairly quickly and don't bump into anything solid. Then cars go along the top straight. Well, it's not straight, it's a series of sweeping curves and into the notorious S's, which is now called Tom Rolt Corner after the great Tom Rolt, great author, engineer, and Tom was actually responsible for rescuing the canal system in this country after the dereliction that they had fallen into after World War II. So the S's that you can see celebrates Tom Rolt. And then the cars accelerate as hard as they can up to a sweeping right-hand bend called the semicircle, and for the first time However, Rich Danby has managed to put a camera, a fixed camera, on the semicircle at the top. There's a bit of a drop beyond it, which looks a bit scary, and when you're driving, competing here, it's particularly scary, but actually, if you go off there, it usually doesn't do any harm. I've done it myself on one occasion. And then it's a flat-out blast, 200 yards up to the finishing line, and then we have a return road back down to the paddock. Our orange-suited marshals are all in place, and we are due to kick off very shortly. In fact, I can see cars beginning to line up at the exit to the paddock. And if we can look at the, I don't know if, Rich, whether we have a camera pointing down from the start line to the exit to the paddock. Yes, we have. There we go. Where the hut is on the right, you can see that's the exit from the paddock. And then there's a yellow line. In fact, there are two yellow lines. You can just see underneath, where's that orange cone you can see near the ambulance. There's a line across there, and at that line you can, it's known as the pre-start line, you can do a few pre-starts, warm up the rear tires, get the heat into the rear tires, but then there's the pre-start line, which is the second yellow line. After that you just trundle up to the start line, and there it is. Those of you who've watched hill climbing here before and watched lots of hill climbing will know that we have a speed trap, a time trap, 64 feet from the start line, and the significance of that is that from the start line to 64 feet in 2 seconds is exactly 1 force of gravity, 1 g of acceleration. And I think the fastest I've ever seen is a 1.59, which is incredibly quick. So, our first car is coming up to the line, and that's Steve Day in the Swift Cooper, which is a Formula Ford car, as you can see. Formula Ford, very popular on the circuits. And Steve sets off from the start line and records 2.42 for the 64 feet. Under the bridge, we'll get his speed under the bridge, 66, and sweeping into Orchard Bend. Nice line through Orchard. Sterling Moss described Orchard Bend as one of his favourite corners worldwide. Round to Torres, burst of downhill acceleration, and then heavy braking into Pardon. And then Steve into the S's and out towards semicircle. S's is quite a notorious, when it's wet under the trees, it's a rather notorious bend. Rounding the semicircle, heads for the finishing line to record a 50.30. He's followed by Tom Weaver in this Van Diemen, 1991 Van Diemen Formula Ford car. Not quite as quick as Steve Day so far, and Steve did a 50.3. Can Tom get into the 40s? No, 55.11. He's followed by Nicky Cottrell. In the last production Lotus Formula Ford racing car, the Lotus 61, and we have a championship throughout the season sponsored by Paul Matty, the Paul Matty Championship for Lotuses, which is divided between race cars and road cars, and Nicky is a long-time competitor in that championship. Nicky recording a similar time at the moment to Tom Weaver, so should be in the mid-50s. Heads for the semicircle. 54.42, slightly quicker than Tom. On his way, Les Buck in the Pringett Mistral. Here he is into S's. Pringett, very rare car, built by Messrs Pringle and Bennett. I think they built 14 of these for Formula Ford, and Les is, I think, the last one still running. Now we jump into an exciting class. This is Dave Uren, who was third in the championship in 2019. That's why he carries the number 3 on his car all through the season. David very quick. .86 miles an hour at bridge and sweeping into semicircle. This will be under 40 seconds, 39.75 for David Uren. Alan Warburton follows in the little Gould GR59 with its blown 1600cc engine. Immensely quick car. Really interesting because it's a bike engine, but it's not sideways across the tub as a lot of them are. It's a 4.5 with a direct shaft drive to a very complex gearbox differential at the back. David is sharing this car as always with, except that it's Alan, I beg his pardon. Alan is sharing his car with his son David. 42.31, Alan taking it relatively easily. Steve Morgan with us in the Empire Evo. .1585 Hayabusa engine. And Steve records a 41.94. He's followed by Mr. Empire Wraith. That's Bill Chaplin, who runs Empire Race Cars, having a fairly rare competition outing. Usually he's looking after his customers' cars. Empire Wraith with its very sophisticated aerodynamics. Speed under the bridge of 84. Lots of power from these Hayabusa engines. And Bill 41.91. Here's John Stockley. And John's in the Force SF, built by Force Racing Cars, and relatively newly established. Well, Force have been around a while, but they are producing a lot of really interesting race cars for hill climbing in particular. John not so quick under the bridge. 73 miles an hour. Again, it's a Suzuki power. And John finishes with a 43.53. Here's Einon Price. Another Force, the Force TA. That was quick start, 2.03 for 64 feet. Is going well. 93, that's quickest so far under the bridge. Einon always pressing on really well. Takes a nice line through Ettores. Trick at Ettores is a late apex. It's very easy to turn it too early, and then you don't get the right setup for the exit of the corner. This might be under 40 seconds for Einon. Let's see. Whistles round at the semicircle. Yeah, 39.24. Best time so far in this these second practice runs for race cars 1600 and above in the Midland Hill Climb Championship. Darren Gumley little Force TA. Another good start, 2.27. Taking it relatively steadily. This will be in the low 40s, I think. 43 or around there. It's followed by Liam Cooper, going with wife Olivia in another Force TA. Time for Darren, 44.41. Liam navigates the S's and up to semicircle. You can see what a glorious day it is. A bit of cloud in the sky, but a nice warm sunshine. Neil Coles round in Torres, and Liam records a 42.44 top of the hill. Neil in the OMS 28. Current OMS carbon fibre tubbed car that Steve Owen is building up in Yorkshire. Neil, 43.42. Richard Weaver. Now Richard we know well from his great work at Chelsea Walsh with his pickup truck. Did a fantastic job, but Richard has decided to have a go at hill climbing, and indeed doing fine in his Van Diemen. Again, 1991 Van Diemen, 1600cc Ford engine, of course. So good to see Richard actually competing on the hills. We've got a 600cc class, and it's nice to see a few 600cc cars out. In recent years there have been so few of them that they've tended to be amalgamated with the up to 1100cc racing cars, but we've got 3 or 4 600s here this weekend. This is Chris Howard Harris in the Hornet. He's followed by Kevin Craven, the very rare Swallow DR14. And Chris has recorded a 56.25. Kevin exit the S's. This car's got a Ford Duratec engine and records a 48.75. Now another circuit car, the Formula Renault 2-litre Vian Wilson with its 2-litre Renault engine. Quick car though, 76 through the bridge for the Formula Renault car, very pretty car. A bit quicker than Kevin, so I would expect Ian to score a time in the mid-40s probably. Here's another lovely view, and Ian up to the finish, 49.32. He'll be glad to be under the 50-second mark. Here's Trish Davis in the well-known Reynard with its V8, 2-litre V8 engine built by Terry Davis, Trish's husband, and they share the car. Trish has spent many years being the spares controller for the Bugatti Owners Club, which is a very demanding job, as you can imagine, sourcing and storing and selling spares for Bugatti cars. Trish on her way into the S's. We'll pick her up. Here she comes into view. Very determined driver. She's quick, so it's a needle match between Terry and Trish. she's going to finish with a 45.54, followed by Mike Tregonning up from Cornwall in the MP88 Pilbeam. There was a time when Pilbeam was the dominant force in hill climbing. Mike Pilbeam, brilliant ex-BRM engineer, and the champion car for many, almost, I was going to say many decades, but for a long period in the 80s and early 90s were Pilbeam cars. And Mike Tregonning has a Ford Duratec in the back of this MP88, 43.99. Now look at the aerodynamics of this OMS. This is an earlier OMS, the OMS 25, in the hands of Pete Tatham. 2.33 for the start in 78. Sweeps round Orchard, takes the nice late apex at Ed Torres. Couple of gear changes possibly, and then heavy braking into Pardon. Great hill climb champion Roy Lane used to say the correct line through Pardon is about a metre out from the inside edge, but everyone had their own opinion on that. Pete, wide exit from the S's, but going well to record a 41.53. Here's David Warburton proudly carrying number 10, so 10th in the championship in 2019, 98 under the bridge, so nearly the ton in this brilliant GR59 Gould, with its very elegant engineering for the transmission, connecting the bike engine. Most bike-powered cars have had their engines across the frame and chain drive to the back axle, but this little group of Goulds have fore and aft engine and shaft drive. 38.62 for David. And here's Charles Hall in, again, as I said earlier, the very sophisticated aerodynamics of the Empire Wraith. Ooh, living dangerously on the exit to Pardon, bumped over the grass a little bit, but no harm done. But I think he spread a bit of mud or earth on the track, so there'll be a short red flag while our hard-working marshals do a bit of sweeping. Charles records a 39.77 in the Empire Wraith. Our big news on the championship front this year is that 6 times champion Scott Moran has, after many years, forsaken the brilliant GR61 Gould with which he won the championship many times, and he's sharing the new little GR59 with Graham Wynne. That's with a 4-litre Judd engine in the back. So a similar car to the car that holds the record here, Sean Gould's GR59, with the Judd in the back producing, I don't know, 600-700 horsepower, which is an incredible power to weight ratio when you think the car probably doesn't weigh much more than 450 kilos. In, again, as I said earlier, the very another quick aerodynamics of the Empire Wraith. Slight excursion, bumping over the mud at the outside of Pardon, so hence a bit of sweeping has been needed, but has been done. So that was Charles Hall, who recorded a 39.77, good time. We saw Liam Cooper just now, who recorded a 42.31. Here's Olivia, whose dad Richard held the record at Shelsley for many years, and he's here this weekend driving a Mallock and celebrating his 77th birthday. So good to see Richard still very much in action. Here's Liam, here's Olivia, 79, under the bridge, neatly run the Tories. It's easy to leave your braking too late for Pardon, and then the car tends to go straight on into the kitty litter. No dramas, touch wood, from Olivia as she heads for the semicircle. She did a good start time of 2.29. Lots of traction, of course, from the Little Force TA, and records a 43.32. Here's another rare car. This is Jonathan Evans sharing the Swallow DR14 with Kevin Craven we saw earlier. I don't know if Jonathan has competed many times here at Prescott. But sensibly taking a reasonably calm approach to learning the hill. .41 for Jonathan Evans. Here's the Formula Renault again, this time in the hands of James Wilson. We saw Ian in it earlier. Ian recorded a 49.32. So James determined to beat that and quickly off the line, 2.4 for 64 feet. 80 under the bridge. So he's 4 miles an hour quicker than Ian was in this car. It's a family battle. Formula Renault sort of thrived for a few years here in this country. Obviously it was much more popular on the mainland of Europe. So can James beat 49.32 of his co-driver? He certainly can with a 45.25. Good run. Next up should be, and I think is, Terry Davis. We saw Tricia in the Reynard 913, Formula 3 Reynard from 1991, before the Dallara dominance of Formula 3. Tricia recorded a 45.54. Remember, this is practice for tomorrow's competition. Tomorrow's Midland Hill Climb Championship competition. Terry, who builds these brilliant V8 engines consisting of two bike engine blocks and heads on a common crankcase. So a 2-litre V8. Producing lots of power and a beautiful noise. 2.37 start, which is good. 78 under the bridge, which is 2 miles an hour quicker than Trish did. Terry takes a nice late apex at Torres. Do please send in your comments. It's lovely to have comments if you're watching on YouTube and elsewhere, particularly if you're watching this outside the UK, but we're always interested to hear from you. Trish's time was a 45.54. Terry's is a 44.14. So he takes family honours for the moment. Remember, though, it's practice. Here's Richard Alexander in the Force PC, Little Force PC. Going well round the into semicircle. And records a 43.67. Here's Pete Tatham. In the OMS 25, slightly earlier OMS, current one is the 28. Not sure why his name isn't appearing on the screen. 96 under the bridge, equal quickest speed under the bridge so far. He's followed by a really interesting car, which we'll see in a minute, in a second or two. Meanwhile, Pete Tatham heads for the finish and records a 41.99. Dominic Hentold is in this Lancia. A certain gentleman in Italy had a Lancia Aurelia, the fabulous Lancia Aurelia, which was a great car but tended to rust to pieces, and obviously that's what happened to his car. So he broke it up and used all the best bits, the engine, the gearbox, the suspension, the brakes, on a self-built space frame, and the result is this single-seater called a Lancia Aurelia. I'm not sure what the Lancia company would say about that. But again, we're still in practice for the Midland Hill Climb Championship runs tomorrow. 61.16 for Dominic. On the line is Kelvin Broad in another Force TA. Kelvin, highly experienced hill climber. This one has a 1300cc bike engine, but blown and producing plenty of power. Safely around to Torres, 83 at the bridge, going well. Kelvin, he knows his way up Prescott. Who we'll see in a few seconds. 40.89 for Kelvin. Richard in this GWR Raptor built by went right up in up near Aberdeen. Featherweight car, but with a 1340 supercharged bike engine. It's incredibly quick and enabled Richard to achieve 4th place in the British Hill Climb Championship, proudly carrying number 4. And Richard records a 38.83. Here's Simon Moyes. Simon in another good GR59 with the 1300cc engine. This engine produces something like 400 horsepower, so from 1300cc, it's incredible amount of power. Now, can Simon get under the 40-second mark? No, I don't think so. I think it'll be just over. Heads for the finish. And he does, 39.16. Excellent. And 99, that's quickest we've seen under the bridge. He's followed by Ian Tucker. Ian is in a brand new OMS 28, so he's feeling his way would be the wrong thing to say, but I beg his pardon, it's the brand new one is in the hands of Lee Griffiths. Ian, I think, has had his for a year or two. Here's Lee getting to grips with this new OMS 28 to record a 40.33. On the line, Lynn Owen, Mrs. OMS. Steve and Lynn have been building OMS cars up in Yorkshire since I think 1985 or so. Built lots and lots of them, well over 100 cars. And you remember Trevor Willis, 3 times British Hill Climb Championship. He's here, of course, with his OMS, but it means that OMS have won the British Hill Climb Championship on more than one occasion. Safe exit from the S's for Lynn. Nice lurid yellow-green and 45.76. Bernard Kevill is quick. Sharing with Simon Andrews in another OMS 28. Here's Graham Wynne in this amazing Gould GR59, built by Sean and David Gould down in the Newbury area. Sister car to the car that holds the record here in the hands of Sean Gould, and this year Graham is sharing his car with 6-times champion Scott Moran, and Scotty is having his first competitive outing in this car. I think they took it to Kerber to shake it down, but it's very different from the GR61 that Scott is so used to. Graham, steady run to record a 40.2. Here's another fantastic car, Lindsay Summers in the DJ Firestorm with its Cosworth XD engine, which she's sharing with her son Alex, who was second in the championship the last time the British Hill Climb Championship ran. Here's Lindsay sensibly navigating Pardon and the S's. The car's nice and warm, nicely warmed up, tyres nice and warm when Alex gets to jump into it down in the paddock. 46.48 for Lindsay in the Firestorm. If you're watching the live stream from Chelsea Walsh in September last year, you'll remember a comment on live stream, Lindsay, you are awesome. I think that was from somebody in the States. But I'm sure Lindsay was pleased to have the compliment. Her time 46.48. Remember, the record here stands at 35.41 in the hands of Sean Gould. Didn't, of course, get challenged last year, that crazy COVID affected year last year, but Sean got the record at I think the September meeting in 2019, 35.41, which is an incredibly quick time. Another treat this afternoon is we've got the bikes. We've got the first round of the British Motorcycle Hill Climb Championship, and they'll be coming up pretty soon. I think we're waiting for a few more cars in Class L of the Midland Championship. That's unlimited capacity racing cars. So Lindsay and Graham Wynn will come down, jump out, and their co-drivers Alex and Scott Moran will jump in. So a small pause. Oh, David, thank you very much. This is excellent coverage. Very professional. Well done. Well, we'll get the hang of it sooner or later. It's been a long winter. Vicky, well, we wish you were here too. I want to be there. Tell us, Vicky, where you're messaging from. Chile. Good luck to my future son-in-law, Richard Alexander, who's racing today. Should have been his wedding day today with my daughter Harriet Bloomfield. At least they can make a memorable day doing their favourite hobby. Yeah, well, I suppose if you have your wedding postponed, this is the best compensation. Thanks, Gilly. Watching from Melbourne. Hi, John. So it's the middle of the night. Good for you. Stay up and get some excitement from Prescott. There's a lot of hill climbing in Australia as well, and there's one particular one that is close to Melbourne. Central Portugal and a car in pieces. Eric Humphreys, thanks for that. What's the photograph of? Enormous thanks for fantastic viewing for Central Portugal. So there's a certain amount of people jumping out and others jumping into the shared cars. And I think first to the line will be Steve Owen in the Works OMS 28. It's called an OMS 28 RPE. I'm not sure what RPE means. But with a 2.7 litre engine in the back, here he comes up to the line. It's funny how nowadays very few people do a lot of tyre warming from the pre-start line. Maybe it's because it's practice and not a competition run. But Steve busy tightening belts. He'll need to drop his visor down. It's not like drag racing where you have to have quick reactions when the light goes green. When the light goes green, you have a bit of time to gather your thoughts and then set off. So Steve, an undramatic start, but 2.25. Getting a racing car off the line is not easy. It's a fine line between stalling the thing and too much wheel spin. Steve has got it absolutely right. I'm not sure whether he has traction control off the line. Lynn's time, yeah, we saw 45.76. She's warming up the car for Steve. Can he get into the 30s? No, he's taking it pretty easy. There's no point in going crazy in a practice run. 41.92 for Steve Owen. Here's Simon Andrews sharing the OMS 28, and he's sharing it of course with Bernard Kevel. They've shared this car for a number of seasons. Both gentlemen of a certain age, but still highly competitive. It's a needle match between the two of them. Bernard recorded a 41.68. Simon's going to do his damnedest to get into the 30s. 2.15 is an excellent start. There's not a huge amount of grip. I mean, the hill has been wintering. This is the first time it's been used in anger this year, so it takes a bit of time for the tarmac to get rubbered in. Simon 87 under the bridge, 1 mph faster than Bernard. It'll be in the 40s. It'll be a 41 or 2, I think. 41.45 for Simon Andrews. Now then, on the line, multiple hill climb champion Scott Moran, sharing this fabulous GR59J with its 4-litre Judd engine. And straight away, Scott's 98 through the speed trap. It's a new car for him. It'll take a bit of getting used to. Certainly very different handling characteristics to the GR61. Amazing aerodynamics on these cars. They took one testing on a long straight and it whistled straight up to 185 miles an hour. Scott 38.38. Andy Tippett in this lovely Brabham BT30X with its 3.5-litre Rover engine in the back. Well, it could be an Oldsmobile or a Buick, but it was developed into the 3.5-litre Rover engine. This car was a Brabham Works car with a 2.5-litre Climax engine, which was prepared for the notorious Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona when all the cars ran very high wings. It didn't run there, but it's got the holes in the uprights to support the upright long arms holding the wings, if you understand what I'm driving at. Being a bit inarticulate. Andy Tippett 46.87. Now here's our record holder on the line, Sean Gould. He's not going to go crazy today. It's practice. There's no point in going for a record. And often when it's a Hill Climb Championship runoff, they will put a brand new set of tyres on. Despite that, Sean records a 2.05 off the line and 94. So taking it relatively easy under the bridge. Sean, well known for winning well over a ton under the bridge. He tells me that he's saved 13 kilos of overall weight in the car and driver combination without costing anything. In other words, he's lost 2 stones himself. He had a slight adventure when he put the power down out of pardon, but no harm done. And Sean finishes with a 38.94. Number 7 indicates that he was 7th in the championship last time. Now here's Will Hall. I've known Will to do 113 under the bridge. This is the extraordinary this is the Force X-Tech with its AER 4-cylinder 2-litre engine, got a new turbo over the winter. It's a difficult car to get off the line, as you can see. Will's always found it very difficult. It's a very narrow margin between stalling it and having wheel spin. This engine was originally developed for the abortive MG Le Mans car and can be, the wick can be turned up to produce getting on for 800 horsepower. From 2 litres, it's almost unimaginable. Will's always quick. Nice start, 2.21. Not so quick as he can do under the bridge, but no point in clanging the car in practice. This will be in the late 30s, 38-ish, I think, 39 maybe. Yeah, 39.22. Nice warm-up run for Will Hall off the line. 3 times champion. Trevor Willis in the OMS 28 with its 3.2 litre PowerTech engine. 92 under the bridge. Slightly slower than Sean and Will. Trevor, immaculate driving as ever. Everybody's getting a bit of power oversteer out of Pardon. Still a bit dusty after his winter layoff. The track, I mean. Trevor, it'll be again in the 38s. No, it's in the 37. 37.47. And we see David Uren again in the earlier GR55B with its 3.5 litre NME V8 engine. David was third in the championship last time it ran. Part of the same team as Wallace Mingies. They usually operate together, but of course Wallace is stuck up in Scotland. Wallace, if you're watching this on the live stream, we miss you badly. Look forward to seeing you, hopefully, pretty soon in this country. David, 38.3. No, Alex, 97. Second in the championship in this immense DJ Firestorm with its Cosworth XD engine, 2.65 litre engine developed for Indy by Cosworth and producing masses of grunt lowdown. When they were turbocharged for racing at Indy, in qualifying they were probably well over 1,000 horsepower. 37.2 for Alex. So in the second runs, slightly quicker than Trevor Willis, so Alex is the quickest. We now come to Lynn Gilbert. We're back to the 600cc class in the Midlands Championship. So Lynn in the OMS Hornet with a little 600cc engine. Here she is. Here he is, I beg his pardon. And 53.87. Richard George in this lovely Chevron B19 that Richard and his daughter Amanda have campaigned for many a long year. Always immaculate, beautifully prepared, beautifully driven, and it's a needle match between Richard and his daughter. This is an ex-Swiss Eggenberger team car with a Cosworth FVC engine in the back. Very, very desirable. Eligible for historic racing, but Richard and Amanda keep it on the hills. Here's Joe McCrell in the Tigger, which I think I'm right in saying has a Peugeot engine, 1600cc engine. Tigger produced a lot of cars, particularly for Le Mans and things like that. Richard George's time in the Chevron was a 52.88. People say Tiger, but it's wrong because Tigger was Tim Schenken and Howden Ganley got together to start Tigger cars. And here's Joe heading for the finish to record a time of 50.67, to be followed by Richard Brown, birthday boy this weekend, Richard, ex-record holder at Shelsley. Walsh held the record for a long time in a Pilbeam, but sharing this Mallock Mark 17 with its 1700cc pushrod Ford engine with his son George. So it's a family affair. We've got Olivia here, Richard's daughter. And Richard always drives immaculately, 46.88 in the Mallock. Here's Paul Alexander in the Force PC. This is another father and son combo. Richard and Paul. Paul is the dad, so it's experience versus youth. $47.21 for dad. Next up, coming to the line, bright orange. Now this is an interesting car. This is a Formula 3 Dallara from 2005. With the V8 2650, the Cosworth XD engine, similar to the one that Alex has got in the Force. This is Jack Cottrell, and this car is new to them. Jack's done a number of seasons in a I think it was an 1100 car, but really getting the feel of this Dallara chassis with the big engine. Certainly, he says, gives him a good kick in the back. Brilliant. 42.58, pretty good for starters. And now a treat, all two-wheeler fans. We've got our bikes. So the British Motorcycle Hill Climb Championship, this is their first round. It's divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 classes, actually 6, but the 250s and the 350s have been amalgamated. Watching from Worcester. Sorry you can't be there. That's Anthony Fessy. So the classes are 250 to 350, 350 to 500, 501 to 750, and 751 to 1300. And we've got one enters in the sidecars and trikes class, which we'll come to a bit later on, but they have a lot of fun. And interestingly, Glyn Poole, who's riding number 3 in the big class, holds the record in 3 classes. He holds the record in the 500cc, the 350 and the 250cc classes, but for this season he's gone up to 890cc on a KTM factory. The factory is the KTM race team. But what's interesting is that Glyn's records have stood for, in 2 cases, for 10 years, and in 1 case, the 350 record, for 12 years. So it's high time somebody had a go at beating these records. Ashley Holt, thank you. Great weather for it. Fantastic coverage. Thank you. Well, thank you, Ashley. It's really interesting. Great to see Prescott in the sunshine. Tim and Barbara Daniel watching from the south of France. Tim, I hope we'll see you at a hill climb soon. But I think we envy you being in the south of France, although we've got Mediterranean weather here today. Interesting for the bikes, there's an interesting split between those whose bikes are based on long suspension travel motocross bikes and the bikes that are developed from road bikes, which are much lower, stiffer, and I'm told that the advantage of the long travel suspension is off the line and round the corners, but the road-based bikes are quicker maximum speed, as you can imagine, with the rider much lower down. In fact, one of the competitors told me that over the finishing line at Scholesy-Walsh, the road bikes are doing something like 130 miles an hour, whereas the motocross-based bikes are around about the 110 mark. But coming to the line, we'll see the number pretty soon. Is a bike that isn't on my entry list. It's number 313, put up on the screen pretty soon. Should come the name of the rider. Probably a late entry. Simon Wilson on a 350 Yamaha. And he belongs to, if you like, the road bike or the circuit bike fraternity rather than the motocross. Yamaha RD350. Bikes off the line are pretty much on a par with cars. 2.56 for Simon. And the other argument, as you see on some hills, is whether to put your foot down around the bends or keep them on the pegs. It kind of gives you a bit of a confidence boost to put a foot down on the deck. Anyway, Simon safely around Ettores and Pardon. Plenty of grip today. It's bone dry, much to the dismay of a lot of our farmers. We haven't had rain in this country for well over a month. It's been the driest, pretty much the driest April on record. Simon is in the semicircle and records a 56.19. Here's Harvey Mills in a Gas 300. He's of the long travel fraternity. And you'll see a number of these people with long travel suspension click. They press the front suspension down on the start line and click it so that it doesn't spring back up again excuse me, until the bike is underway, and it means that they have the, if you like, the nose down for the start and avoids the risk of doing a wheelie and going over backwards. Harvey on the gas. Gasses his way through Pardon. He's a member of the leg down fraternity. Certainly ran the Pardon hairpin. Off the line goes Jamie Mitchell, 6th in the championship when they last ran it in 2019, which is pretty good because Jamie is on a 500cc BRC. Meanwhile, we've got a time for Mick Lovelock of 56.93. Record in the 350s is 46.83. Record for the 500s Well, for the 350s to 500, it's 45.29, and for the 500s, 45.05. So we're, of course, some way off that in the season opener. This is number 501, that's Andy Eames on the Honda Mestizo. 400cc Honda engine. He heads into the S's. He was fairly carefully round Orchard at 41 miles an hour under the bridge. Again, foot down. A little bit of a sort of tentative wheelie out of Torres. Safely round Pardon. And off the line goes John Bottomley in this 1939 Velocette. He says the bike is marginally older than the rider. Simon Hocking's time clicking up 52.49, and he was on the Husqvarna Swedish bike. Velocette's well on its way. Riding position, of course, the pre-war bike. Does it have rear suspension, Velocette? Probably. He's followed by Mark Short on another KTM, the Austrian KTM. For some reason it's not orange painted. Has to lift off a bit round Pardon. Danger of running out of road. John Bottomley on the Velocette still running, 67.96. And it looks as if Mark's going pretty quickly on the KTM 500. And we scroll back to Steve Atkins on a Greaves 403. And Mark Short was quick, 52.13. Here's the Greaves. Hands of Steve Atkins. Only 403cc. We're in the class up to 500, so giving away 100 cubic centimeters, but it doesn't seem to hold him back. Steve has finished with a 59.85. He was followed by Patrick Dolan on a 495cc Honda, heading towards the finish. And also off the line is Kerry Hall on a KTM 450. So we've got three bikes on the hill at the same time. They come thick and fast. I don't mean the riders. 50.83, that's I think our quickest time so far among the bikes. That's Patrick Dolan, 50.83. Terry Hall into the S's and out again, and Doug Parnell follows on a road-based Yamaha 450. Almost gets it on the grass on the entry to Ed Torres. Terry Hall on the KTM, 55.57 on the line. George Hodges we'll see in a few minutes. It's interesting, isn't it, that in the 500cc class, a great majority of the bikes are 400 to 450cc, rather than taking advantage of the full capacity of the class. Doug Parnell nearly has finished. His George Hodges, who is quick, 67 through the speed trap. He's a foot out rather than a foot down, Merchant, so the foot is out, and that probably gives him a bit more balance. Ooh, wow, a bit of a wheelie and a wobble coming out of Pard for George. He's followed by Julian Kendall on a 400cc Suzuki. Last runner, I think, in the up to 500s, which brings us to winner of the championship last year, Tom Short. We'll see in a second on the KTM Here he goes. KTM with a 653cc engine. Tom Short. Now the record in this class, the 750cc class, is 45.05. But Tom won the championship, so he obviously is a quick guy. In the meantime, Julian Kendall heads for the finish on his Suzuki. Tom Short into the S's. Neil Tamlin, our second runner, with a 600cc Yamaha. Julian Kendall 54.15. Tom Short. Wow, this is a quick run. 46.47 is only a second and a bit outside the record, so these guys will have another run this afternoon. They're not here tomorrow. Neil Tamlin, 600cc Yamaha, into the S's. He's followed by Michael Fiddler on a 650cc Suzuki. Immaculate bike of Michael Fiddler. Neil Tamlin heads for the finish, 57.66. Richard Bowker is on a 530cc TM SMR. I'm afraid I can't give you much detail on that bike. I'll try and find out a bit more as we go along. Long travel suspension, modified motocross bike. Imagine riding one of these on the Dakar through all the dunes in Saudi Arabia. Doesn't bear thinking about. Tony Whittle is on a Ducati. Lovely big Duke with its desmodromic valve gear. What does that mean? It means it doesn't have valve springs. It has mechanical closing of the valves. And Ducati have really made Desmo technology work well. Michael Fiddler 57.83, Richard Bowker 52.56, Tommy Hodges off the line in 2.23. That's a quick getaway, and 67 under the bridge. In the meantime, we're up in the S's with Tony Whittle on the Duke. But he's taking it a bit easy. First run. Massive acceleration. Glyn Poole, here's our triple record holder, but Glyn on this big 890cc KTM. Very different from the bikes he's used to, and I think he's had this bike for 3 days or so. It is road registered, as you can see, and it's road legal on road tyres. I guess Glyn would be happy on his first outing in this bike to get under the 52nd mark. Alan Jolly, another highly experienced competitor in this competition, on a big KTM 1190. That's almost the biggest engine we've got among the bikes, although we've got James Goodman coming later on a 1200cc Harley. Glyn, yeah, 48.96, that's pretty good. What can Alan Jolly do on the KTM with a big 1190cc engine? Matthew Mogridge, another big engine, has got a Suzuki 1000 with 1080cc, 57 round under the bridge, and a nice late apex at Ed Torres. Alan Jolly heads for the 52nd mark. Pretty good, 51.7. Matthew Mogridge in the S's, and Alan Jolly 51.7. We've seen that. Matthew heads to the semicircle. Off the line went Dave Norris. Will pick him up soon on the 1050cc Triumph. In the meantime, Matthew heads for the finish, 51.16. Here's the Triumph 1050. I think it's a triple. It's rather a high-pitched exhaust note. Triumph's such a success since the company was bought, and a brilliant factory, an ultra-modern factory up in the Midlands. I've been around the factory. It's fascinating to watch these bikes being built. So Dave finishes with a 53.82. Len Vincent on a big KTM again, rather similar to the bike that Glyn Poole is riding. 1195 KTM. KTM built in Austria, of course. They did build a car, didn't they? A sort of track car, which was either called an Expo or a Crossbow. So Len Vincent 54.03. Dave Peat into the S's on his KTM. Andy Greenhouse comes to the line on a 1 litre Suzuki, we'll see in a second. Using all the road out of the S's is Dave. This will be in the low 50s, I guess. 52.22. James Godman has left the line. James, last runner, he's on the big 1200cc Harley. We'll see him. Here he is into Ed Torres. Does it have a belt drive or a chain drive? Road Harleys have a belt drive, don't they? Toothed belt. Touch of the foot downs for James. In the meantime, Andy Greenhouse 56.77, and we've got our one and only trike in the hands of Simon and Jane Foster. Here they are. It's a Honda F2 with a 600cc engine. Jane, athletic, doing her acrobatics to keep the thing on 3 wheels as far as she can. James has finished on the Harley with a time of 57.53. We might have a bit of a pause after Simon and Jane. No, we don't. We're going straight on to our next 4-wheel class. But they finish with a 51.3. So we'll have another look at the bikes scheduled to reappear at 5 minutes to 4, 15:55. Here, though, is Zoe Shearman on the MR2 Toyota. And she kicks off the New Barn Championship. New Barn is in Cheltenham, a local fettler of Land Rovers. If you're in this part of the world, they're the place to go to have your Land Rover fixed. The New Barn Championship is for drivers who have what's called the inter-club license, used to be called the B license, and it's for road registered cars. As you can see from Zoe's car, she's recorded as 61.35, and they are handicapped based on, I think, their fastest recorded time so far, and so the handicapping has to be worked out before we know who's won the round. You get 30 points for a win, down to 5 points for 14th place, and there are 12 rounds throughout the season. It's a good mix of cars in the New Barn Championship. Zoe was followed by Steve Perry, who recorded a 58.46. On the hill, Adrian Burrows in this much modified Ford Puma. There he is. And he's followed by the first of our Subarus in the hands of James Dockery. Adrian Burrows on the Puma, 60.44. James Dockery is in the S's, having all the advantages of four-wheel drive, turbocharged flat 4 2-litre with a very low centre of gravity. That's always been the advantage of the Subaru Impreza. Made a very good rally car, of course, and records a 50.31. James, good time. Leading the line is Steve Sims on a 2-litre Renault Clio. Renault Clio Sport, which has been developed through the years from the 172 to gradually the 2-litre engine producing more and more power. But this is a car dating from 2002, so it's nearly 20 years old, but still nice and quick. No dramas in the S's for Steve. They make a very good starter hill climb car, the little hot hatches like the Clio or the Peugeot 106. And then you can graduate, if you want to a Porsche Cayman like Alan McFarlane's 3.4-litre flat-six mid-engine Porsche. The time for the Renault was 55.76. Meanwhile, for me, the Cayman is probably the prettiest of the current Porsches. Certainly prettier than some of the recent BMWs. Don't tell the people in Munich that I said that. But the Cayman has finished with a time of 53.1. Here's a Porsche 924, the 2-litre Porsche, front engine Porsche that was a great sales success, had brilliant handling. People were rude about it, but they shouldn't have been, because it was a very practical, neat little sports car. And Andrew in the 924 is heading for the finish, to be followed by Paul Farrow in the first of our MX-5s. 57.72 for Andrew. Pretty pale metallic blue MX-5. Y Reg, what does that mean? Means about, what does Y mean? 99 or so. Amazing to think that MX-5s have been on the market since 1989 in various versions, although the purists say the early ones are the ones to go for. Here's Paul Farrow. We missed him. Tim Stokes in the Suzuki Swift Sport. Another neat, rapid, practical little car. And we've got a time for Paul Farrow of 57.81. We're watching World Golf, but you'll see something very pretty following beyond. Tim into the S's. Here, look at that. The Will Goffs Alfa Romeo 4C, all fiberglass with the 1800cc all aluminium Alfa Romeo TBI engine. It hasn't been a big sales success, and I don't think the 4C is made anymore. Alfa made a crazy mistake of having a front suspension set so that it dodged all over the place following tram loading and following the camber. So the original road tests of the 4C were pretty uncomplimentary about its handling. But pretty soon the people found the relatively simple fix of the front suspension. I think it referred to the degree of toe out. Completely revolutionized and tamed the handling. Why Alfa themselves couldn't do that, goodness only knows. But Will Goff in that lovely car has recorded a 54.49. We've got an MX-5 on the hill, and here it is in the hands of Rob Guttridge. And Rob's dates from 1998. So I suppose a Mark II MX-5, and he's followed by another one in the hands of Sean West. Not surprising that the MX-5 is the best-selling sports car of all time. Everybody who drives them says how delightful they are to drive. And this little MR2, the third version of the MR2, again is a neat, tidy, nice little sports car with its mid-engine. The only problem with this little MR2 is it's got virtually no luggage space at all. So if you're going away for a weekend, a toothbrush and that's about it. We've got a time for Sean West of 53.03, which is quick for the MX-5. John Beattie in the little MR2 is nearing the finish, and rounding it is John Brunner in the G20 Ginetta from the days when Ginetta were operated by the Walklett brothers. I think dates from 2000. But Ginetta since then have had great success producing cars for various race series, including Ginetta Juniors for the sort of 14-year-olds, which has become a real cradle for future racing drivers as an alternative to karting. John Brunning finishes with a 55.11. Here's the Caterham Super 7 of Andrew Wilcox with its 1600cc. Not sure what engine it's got. And an unusual car on the line, Volvo T5 Estate. Do you remember they raced these in the British Touring Car Championship? This is the Volvo in the hands of Mark Maynard, number 36, who should have been driving a Hillman Imp, but the Hillman Imp wasn't big enough for him, so he's bought the Volvo. These cars are very quick, the T5, 5-cylinder, 2.4 litre. Time for Andrew Wilcox, 52.91. That's a good time in the Super 7 Caterham. But if you can pick up a nicely maintained T5 from sort of 20 years ago, it makes a very nice and rapid, deceptively rapid road car. And of course plenty of luggage space if you're an antique dealer. David Rose, first of our Lotus Elans. Meanwhile, Mark in the Volvo heads for the finish to record maybe the fastest Volvo estate car time at Prescott, 62.69. Pretty little Elan of David Rose with a fixed hard top. Car from 1963, very rare A-Reg. Brilliant concept, the Elan with its backbone chassis and the Ford twin cam engine. This one's got fixed headlights, which is probably sensible because the standard car had, I think they were vacuum powered headlights to wink them up and down, which usually meant that one refused to come up and the thing was winking at you. David Rose in the Elan is nearly there. He's followed by this pretty little Mini Cooper of Chris Dew. 53.74 for David in the Elan. We look at the BMW Minis and think they're little tiny little cars, but then the real Mini, it's incredible how small they are. Alec Isigonis was a real genius, but of course when the Mini first appeared in 1959, people were much smaller. I think it's estimated that the average height has gone up by 5 inches or so in the last 50 years or so. And so a Mini Cooper for a lot of people now is just simply too small. But if you can get in, it's fun. Nice car, the Sunbeam Alpine of Simon Firth Bernard. This is an early-ish one with the high tail fins at the back. Later on, slightly modified body and beefed up a bit, and with a Ford V8 engine it became, of course, the famous Sunbeam Tiger. But the Alpine was a nice touring two-seater. Not many competed in took part in competition, although a number of people rallied them. And Simon is nearly there, but he's followed by Alex Risk in this pretty Alfa Romeo GT Junior, classic Alfa that was eligible for saloon car racing, and then in European touring car racing it was a major competitor for the Lotus Cortina. We've got a time for Simon in the Alpine of 61.55. Here's David Keeling in his Westfield. Number 41. With a 2-litre Vauxhall engine. Alex Risk recorded a 60.47. Here's another of the little MR2s, this time in the hands of Martin Rawson. You could have these turbocharged or not turbocharged. You could have them with manual gearbox or automatic gearbox. And if you've got a couple of grand going spare, you can pick them up for peanuts. Off the line, Alfa Spider with the 2-litre twin-cam Alfa Romeo engine. Floor pan based on the, I think, the Alfa Punto. P-Reg Spider is a fairly early one. I had one of these and loved it. And the 2-litre one has much more nimble handling. There was the V6, of course, the famous 3-litre and then 3.2-litre V6, which is a lovely engine, but it was quite a heavy lump to put in the front of a Spider. Didn't do wonders for the handling, but was a beautiful touring car. Chris D, Mini Cooper S. This is the BMW version, and doesn't it look small, but the real Mini looks even smaller. There's been a huge sales success. It was really a surprise to BMW. I think they estimated a certain number would be sold every year, and in reality it was 2 or 3 times that number, so they had to quickly ramp up production at Cowley, and it's gone from strength to strength. Got slightly bigger in the process, and some of them are not the most beautiful cars, some of the longer, bigger ones, but they have been a success. Chris records a 53.73, and the last of our cars in this class is the Audi TT. Remember, we're in the Midland Championship class for interclub license holders in road cars, and this is Paul Renison in the Audi TT. Time for Chris D, 53.73 in the Mini Cooper S. And we've got a treat for our eyes very shortly, and here it is in the shape of the Ferraris, taking part in the Ferrari Hill Climb Championship, and leading them away is the 430 of David Snelson. In the meantime, Paul Renison in the Audi TT records a 54.8. Lovely V8, 4.3 litre mid-engine Ferrari. 5, as far as I know, 5 valves per cylinder, revving to something like 9,000 revs. And his car dates from 2008, but you wouldn't think so by looking at it. He's followed by Richard Preece in a slightly earlier car, the 360 Modena, 3.5 litres, so slightly smaller engine. David Snelson records a 49.06. Here's the 360 Modena. Again, 1.6 litre V8 in the back, with a lovely exhaust note. Not many with a manual gearbox. Great majority had the twin clutch gearbox. Here's another 360 off the line. Martin Jones. His car dates from the year 2000, so it's hard to believe that this car is 21 years old. Still immaculate. Take it pretty easy round Orchard. Don't bend your nice Ferrari at Prescott. But a change of driver. We thought 53 was going to be Mark Wibberley in a 360, but in fact it's Pauline Goodwin. Martin Jones in his red 360 is getting towards the finish. Pauline Goodwin, long-time competitor with her husband, had many different Ferraris. This, of course, is the well, it's called a 323 on the screen, but I think we call it a 328. Development of the 308 in the famous Giallo Fly, which is the Italian for bright yellow. Martin Jones recorded a 67.07. Pauline's nearly there. Meanwhile, off the line comes Paul Booth in the Ferrari 458. From 2012. They progressively got bigger and bigger engines, so the 458 has a 4.5 litre engine. This is Paul Booth. And of course the Ferrari Championship is handicapped, so we don't know. We know who's quickest on scratch, but we don't know immediately who wins on handicap. But our last runner in the Ferraris is, I think, the 355. No, it's not. It's a 308 GT4, the one with the Bertone body, in the hands of Ewan Atwood. Time for Paul Booth was a 55.4. Here's the 308 GT4. V8 powered, of course. It was the first of the Dinos with a V8 engine. And it had 2 micro seats at the back, so if you had small kids, you could take the children with you. The only trouble with this Bertone body was terribly prone to rusting, so not many of them have survived in good condition, but this one looks nice. From the Sublime to the Gore Blimey, this is the Burt Hadley Championship for Austin 7 based specials, which is divided into 2 classes between road going and track cars, and we're kicked off by Charles Plain Jones in his Cowley special. They have to have Austin 7 chassis, Austin 7 engine and rear suspension and gearbox, but front suspension is free. You can have any front suspension you like. So we have all sorts of weird and wonderful versions of the Austin 7. Charles 6406, followed by Steve Smallman in his Austin 7. Which has a very cut down body, and there was a version of the Austin 7 that looked as if it had this body with the cutouts for the doors and a slab tank at the back, a bit like a J2 MG. That's not it, that's an Ulster, but the previous car, Stephen Smallman's car. And I'll remember I hope, before the next run. Oh dear, 2 wheels for Julia Wolstenholme. So that was a slight heart in the mouth, I think. Steve Smallman's recorded a 78.49. Here's Julia, who managed to get her little Austin 7 up onto 2 wheels at Pardon, but luckily it then decided that 4 was better. But I think it gave Julia a bit of a hiccup. She's followed by Peter Howard in a much modified Austin 7 Ulster with the pointed tail. Julia finishes with a 74.95. Here's the Pigsty Special. Paul Gearing. Called the Pigsty Special because the chassis was found propping up the roof of a pigsty. And from that they built this neat little racing special. Peter Howard heads towards the finish. He's just in front of Paul, I beg his pardon. Julia has finished with a 74.95. Peter Howard finished with a 72.54. Paul Gearing in the pigsty is nearly finished, and behind him is Joan Mullard, who won the championship last year in his Austin 7 with the Hamlin body. Hamlin would supply you with a fiberglass body for your Austin 7. Paul Gearing is finished in pigsty with a 57.78, and he's followed by Douglas Alderson. We'll see his car very soon. It's just described as an Austin 7. Well, we knew that, and we'll see it pretty soon. But Gerald Mullard in the Hamlin is very near to the finish. We're watching Douglas Alderson, 69.43 for Gerald, the red Hamlin bodied car. Douglas Alderson in his Austin 7 is heading into the S's. Graham Beckett in the Ulster is on his way. Here he comes. Lots of Ulsters, lots of Ulster replicas, but there are some original cars. I'm not sure if this is one of them, but it looks nice. So he's safely round Pardon, and an addition to our class runners has just taken off the line in the shape of Nick Allen in the extraordinary Austin 7 Special, which obeys all the rules. It's an Austin 7 chassis, it's an Austin 7 engine and gearbox, but the engine's behind the driver, and it's a rapid little machine. That's the ultimate crab track, isn't it? Crab track means the rear track is much, much narrower than the front track, and of course with freedom on the front suspension, Nick can have it as wide as he likes. And we got our bikes coming back again, so hold your horses if you're a bike fan. But meanwhile we'll quickly watch Nick Allen rounding semicircle. This should, I think, be the fastest of our Austin 7s. It is by some margin, 58.03 for Nick. Back to the bikes. Remember, this isn't practice, this is their round 1 of their championship. It is kicked off by Simon Wilson on the 350 Yamaha. Simon did a 56.8 first run. Neatly rounded Tories. Record in this class is 46.83. It's surprising, irrespective of capacity, how similar all the records are. He's followed by Harvey Mills on the Gas 300. There he is going under the bridge as we caught a glimpse of Simon Wilson heading through the S's. Harvey goes 53 miles an hour under the bridge. Simon finishes with a 55.86. Bit quicker than his first run. Harvey Mills did a 56.75 first time up. And he's followed off the line by Mick Lovelock on the KTM. But in the meantime, we focus on Harvey heading towards semicircle on the Gas, of which I know less than nothing, I'm afraid. But he finishes with a 56.42. Mick Lovelock follows him on the KTM. He's down from Burton-on-Trent. A number of these bike competitors come from the West Country, but in this case Mick is from Burton-on-Trent, home of beer. He did a 57.06. All three runners in this first class were very similar timed, with Harvey Mills just the quickest. But at the moment it's Simon Wilson leading the way. Mick Lovelock finishes with a 56.54. Andy Eames, 39 under the bridge, taking it fairly gently. He's on the Honda Maestro with 400cc, well 398. Honda, I guess a twin, must be a twin, mustn't it? Here's the Husqvarna of Simon Hocking, famous Swedish manufacturer, particularly of sprint and motocross bikes. Here's the Husqvarna into and through the S's. 67.12 for the Andy Eames Honda Mestizo. And here's our oldest bike, the 1939 Velocet, in the hands of John Bottomley. Ooh, John has a bit of a mischief at Pardon. Thought he'd lost the engine, but it came back to life. Must have cost him 2 or 3 seconds, so he'll be cursing internally, but he's still going fine. Simon Hocking on the Husqvarna, 51.62. Jamie Mitchell, Jamie did a 48.39. That's on the BRC. We missed that, but that's a brilliant run. Jamie's 48.39. Yeah, poor John Bottomley, 71.77. Cost him a lot of time. He's followed by Mark Short, who's rounds semicircle. He's going quickly. Can this be? No, it can't be in the 50s. 51.1. Steve Atkins on the Greaves. Here he is rounding on. I once did a mixed test day at Brands Hatch. I was in a Formula Junior Lotus, and the bikes were on the track at the same time. It's really interesting how they went away down the straight. They were miles quicker in a straight line, and I caught them up on all the corners, so our overall lap time wasn't so different. But of course I had the benefit of 4 tyres on the road and they only had 2. Patrick Dolan's finished with a very good time of 50.29. Here's Terry Hall into and through the S's on his 450 KTM. Meanwhile, Doug Parnell, well-known name in this championship, on a lovely Yamaha ZRF. Doug Parnell did a 56.7 last time up. Terry Hall has finished on his KTM with a time of 54.71. Here's George Hodges, 66 through the trap. Bit of a confidence boot sticking out. Little wheelie, just showing the amount of acceleration you can get out of the slow corners. Quickly round Parton. And Doug Parnell records a 56.6. So our quickest bike, I think, still is Jamie Mitchell with his 48.39. Here's Julian Kendall, RM Suzuki. George, what can George do? A 49.18, so another one in the 40s. Good run. Michael Fiddler rounding Ed Torres. Julian Kendall up near the top in the low 50s. Mike does a wide entry into Parton, so nice line through Parton. Julian Kendall did a 54.17. Here's Neil Tamlin on the 600 Yamaha. Now, something's gone wrong, or has he been red flagged? No, something's gone wrong. So he's parking it. But he will probably be guided by our marshal to wheel it back to the paddock. That's a shame. So no damage, of course, but maybe mechanical problems. Michael Fiddler, who went up before Neil, recorded a time of 57.13 on the 650 Suzuki. Neil desperately trying to kick it to life. Brilliant coverage, impeccable, knowledgeable car. Ooh, hang on, you haven't noticed all the mistakes. Watching from southwest France. Thanks, Dave. Steve Murgatroyd just found this. Thumbs up. Great coverage, guys. Wish we were there. Well, I think this will probably be the last meeting at Prescott without spectators. I hope I'm right, because we've got some great meetings coming up throughout this season, including a one that celebrates the Italian motor industry, so lots to look forward to at Prescott. And remember, we have the Prescott Driving School. Thanks, Rich. Here's our event calendar for 2021. So lots of hill climbs, lots of Porsche spelt wrong at Prescott on the 19th of June. We've got an Italian day on Sunday the 30th of May. All sorts of things coming. The big meeting, or one of the big meetings of the year, is the Vintage Sports Car Club, when the vintage guys come here. In the meantime, Richard Barker takes off on the big TM. 2.15 is a brilliant start, and 60 under the bridge is pretty good. So Richard on his own on the hill. We'll find out, I hope, what happened to Neil. But it's a shame when the competitor doesn't get his full complement of 4 runs. Remember, they had 2 practice runs this morning, which were not screened. On the line is number 1, Tom Short. Meanwhile, just taking off the line is Tony Whittle. Meanwhile, Richard Barker. This will be quite a quick run. 51.51, not bad at all for Richard. Tom Short's taken off in 2.14 off the line, but in the meantime, here's Tom into Ed Torres. Tony Whittle is just rounding Parton in front of Tom. He's on the Ducati, the 750 Ducati. Tom's going, well, Tom's number 1, so he won the championship last year, and he's going very quickly. 69 under bridge. Tony is heading for the finish, and Tom will not be far behind him. 62.68 for Tony Whittle on the Duke. Tom Short, 45.94. Fantastic. Well done. That's brilliant. 45.94 for Tom. Now, is that a record? No, it's not quite, but not far away. Here's our record holder. In fact, our triple record holder, Glyn Poole. We'll see him in a second, but meanwhile, Tommy Hodges. Here's Glyn on the new to him KTM Fatry 890. He's only had it for 3 days, I think. So he's moved up into the big class, holds the record in 3 classes here, and was 3rd in the championship, as you can see, last year. Tommy Hodges, 48.39 is pretty good, but Tom Short way ahead with a 45.94. Glyn is nearly there. In the meantime, Alan Jolly on the big KTM, rounding in Torres. 48.91 for Glyn Poole. He'll soon whittle that down into the 45s, I'm sure. Now, can Alan Jolly do anything about 45.94 of Tom Short? I think not. He's going well, but my goodness, that was a quick run of Tom's. No, he's heading round semicircle. It'll be 50.92, not bad at all. On his way, Matthew Mogridge on the big Suzuki, rounds at Torres. Lovely twin pipes sticking out the back. Pretty much a road racing bike rather than a sprint bike. Here's this is Dave Morris on the 1050 Triumph. Matthews finished with a 50.62. We'll be wishing he was in the 49s, but it's still a respectable time. Dave Norris on the Triumph Triple. Making a lovely noise, producing lots of power. Then heavy braking into the first S, out of the S's, up to semicircle. It'll be in the low 50s, I guess. Dave Pete in the KTM heads into a Taurus. 53.68 for Len Vincent on the 1200 KTM. Here's Dave Pete on his KTM. Andy Greenhouse takes off. We'll see in a second from the line. Dave Pete, good run. Can he make it under 50? No. 51.66. Here's Andy Greenhouse on the 1 litre Suzuki. Road registered. Fun to drive on the road, I guess. On a day like this, certainly. And off the line goes the Harley, which I think I can confirm is chain drive rather than belt drive. Andy Greenhouse, 1 litre Suzuki in the 50s, 54.29. So our last two-wheel bike, James Godman on the 1200 Harley, big twin of course. Different philosophy, the American bikes to the European and the Japanese, because they have long distances to ride and they major on cruising comfort. Simon and Jane on the F2 Honda trike on their way. Jane Foster leaps to apply what little weight she has to where it can do the most good, hanging on tight. James Godman's time on the Harley, 56.44. Jane not all that far from the Armco on the inside of the bend. She's got more courage than I have, that's for sure. And they head for the finish to record a 51.74. The record for trikes is 48.64, and that was broken 4 years ago. Back to cars. And back to Zoe Sherman in her little Toyota MR2. Zoe safely round Pardon. She's followed by Steve Perry, early MX-5. Nice that the latest version of the MX, unlike most cars which tend to put on weight as they get older, the latest MX-5 I think is lighter than its predecessor, which is always a good move, and it had rave reviews. It's had rave reviews in all the comics. Zoe records a 59.81. Sorry for the silence, I'm just scrolling through to try and pick up the first run times. But Steve Perry's finished on the MX-5 with a 57.84. Here's the Ford Puma. We didn't really get a good look at the Ford Puma on Adrian's first run. It's in pretty much standard trim, I think. This was the first Ford to be named Puma, but they've recently produced a new one, which isn't a sports car, but again it's had good reviews. James Dockery navigates the S's in the Subaru Impreza, but meanwhile Adrian Burrows records a 59.55. James heads towards the finish. Stephen Sims in the Renault Clio, 20-year-old Renault Clio, looking immaculate, going really well. When I say 20 years old, I mean 19 years old, 52 plate. And you can have lots of fun on the hills with a Renault Clio, Peugeot 205, Peugeot 106, all the little hot hatches. Most of our champions have started their hill climbing career either in little hatchbacks or in Caterham or Westfield 7s, and then you gradually go up the classes. We have got the bikes again because they've got a runoff, and they've got a runoff at the end of the meeting, which is scheduled for about 5 o'clock. So look forward to that if you're a bike enthusiast. In the meantime, the Cayman has gone off the line and then stopped. Now, the good news is that the rear wheels didn't cross the line, as far as I can see. I'm not sure why he stopped, or whether he was stopped by the marshals, but anyway, because the rear wheels didn't cross the line, he gets a run. There's a bit of a discussion between the driver and the marshals, so that Alan can line up on the line. Maybe there's a bit of a dispute over whether the rear wheels cross the line or not. He's off anyway, that's great. Okay, 3.4 litre Cayman. There's one on the hills that has had its engine boosted to about 500 horsepower, so they're obviously very tunable, as of course Porsche engines are. Here's the 924 following Alan, 2 litre. Then there was the turbo. Then the final version with this body was the 968 with the 3 litre 4-cylinder Porsche engine, and apparently absolutely brilliant handling. So the Cayman has finished. Alan McFarlane with a 52.59 after all the drama on the start line. Another pretty MX-5 in the hands of Paul Ferro. Meanwhile, the 924 Porsche finishes with a 58.3. And off the line comes the little Suzuki Swift Sport. That's another great little hot hatch. Good fun. Ultra reliable, of course. And very lightweight. One of the problems with cars nowadays is they're getting heavier and heavier. But Suzuki, the little Swift Sport, stays nice and light. Paul Ferro in the Mazda, the pale blue one, 58.75. And here's Tim with the Swift Sport. Well, it wouldn't be Swift if it wasn't sporty, or it wouldn't be sport if it wasn't Swift. He heads towards semicircle. Meanwhile, here goes Will Goff in this lovely Alpha 4C, of course, double clutch gearbox. So, in other words, 2 pedals. Tim's finished with a 60.04 in the Suzuki. Not sure if the 4C's body is fiberglass or carbon fiber, but it isn't half elegant. It's quite a wide car. I mean, I think Alpha thought to begin with it was competition for the Lotus Elise, but it's a much bigger car. It's really in a different category altogether. This will be early 50s, 54-64 for Will Goff. Rob Guttridge in the MX-5. It's quite a fiddly business getting people lined up correctly on the start line. If you haven't watched hill climbing before, you might wonder what that black knife is for the front of the car. It's not for punishing people. It's a matte black timing strut that breaks the light beam to record your time. Because there was a period when, before the timing struts were introduced, when cars with very low bodywork at the front would be, halfway through, well through the timing beam before it reacted, because their bodywork was under the beam, which is why the timing beam came in. I think Patsy Burt, well-known lady hill climber in the 50s and 60s, was the first to introduce timing strut. Anyway, Rob Guttridge off the line in his S-Reg MX-5. What's S, about 98 or so? Hard top. Now, is that a fixed hard top? Yeah, I think it is a fixed hard top, isn't it? The new version has a folding metal hard top, if you want it. Meanwhile, off the line goes Sean West in an immaculate dark blue one. We'll see in a second. Much more modern MX-5. Here he is. That's only 11 years old. And it's a surprise what a difference it makes aerodynamically if you run with the hood up. Hood down with a windscreen up creates a lot of drag. It's quite surprising the effect it has. I've got a convertible which I can drive on the road, and with the roof up, it's a metal folding roof. Or with the roof down, it costs you at least 2 mpg because of the increased drag. Interesting. Here's Sean anyway, and records a 53.08. Bob Guttridge before him, 58.59 in the red MX-5. In the meantime, here's Ian Beattie heading round Hardin in another little Toyota MR2. And he's followed by the Ginetta G20 of John Brunner, rounding Orchard and into the correct. I'm sorry to obsess about this a bit. I do bang on a bit about the danger, well, not the danger, but the error of turning too early into Torres, because if you do that, you end up all wrong for the exit down the hill. I promise not to bang on about that anymore. Now then, Ian Beattie, 59.64 in the MR2. Ginetta is heading towards the finish. In the meantime, here's the Caterham Super 7 in the hands of Andrew Wilcox. John Brunner in the Ginetta, 55.05. And hill climbing gives you plenty of contrast. We've got this Caterham Super 7 on the hill, and on the start line is Mark Maynard in the Volvo T5. which I think is just, it isn't four-wheel drive, is it? It's front-wheel drive, so a certain amount of front wheel squealing off the line. The Caterham finishes in 51.97, proving that you can compete in all sorts of cars. We don't often see Volvo estate cars on Prescott. Usually they're driving around Cheltenham with wardrobes and things in the back, antiques of course. The Volvo comes into the S's. In the distance you can see the little blue Elan, here it is, of David Rose. I think it's the only Elan we've got here today. Usually we have a squadron of them. The story is that Lotus wanted a chassis of some sort to test the twin cam engine and the drivetrain of their next model, and so they cobbled up this backbone chassis, and then somebody said, hey, this works really well, why don't we productionize this and just put a fiberglass body around it? And that was the answer. So that was how the Elan was born. And here is another revolutionary car, the Austin Mini Cooper, in the hands of Chris Dew. My mum had one of the first Minis in about 1960, and we drove it down to Barcelona, and it was a sensation. The people in their deux chevaux, the farmers in their deux chevaux, almost dropped their yellow cigarettes when we came steaming past. Here's Simon Firth Bernard in this pretty Sunbeam Alpine. Do you remember? No, you won't remember the Hillman Husky. Hillman Husky was a sort of small estate car built by Hillman of the Roots Group, and they had, funny enough, the platform for the Husky was shared by the Sunbeam Alpine. Chris Dew in the Mini, 62.4. The Alpine is nearly finished, and here's this lovely Ginetta Junior. Did I say Ginetta Junior? GT Junior of Alfa Romeo, in the hands of Alex Risk. The lovely twin spark, twin cam engine. Motoring journalists in this country tend to be very rude about Alfa Romeos, and I never understood why, but I guess they have their reasons. Here's David Keeling, 2-litre Vauxhall powered Westfield. Meanwhile, Alex Risk in the Alpha has finished with a 59.53. Westfield going nicely, 2-litre Vauxhall producing, I guess, about 240 horsepower. Plenty in a little lightweight car. Not a cloud in the sky. Is that lovely? Roy Salvatore said, you give me Goodwood on a summer day and keep the rest of the world. Well, I think give me Prescott on a spring day and you can keep pretty much anything else. Here's the Toyota MR2, pretty dark blue one of Martin Rawson. David Keeling, 56.35. And here's the Spider. 2-litre twin spark engine. It's quite a comfortable, it wasn't all that quick, but it was a comfortable cruising car. Something's fallen off, well, it's an Alfa Romeo. And interesting to compare the BMW Mini Cooper S with the proper one, when I say proper, the original one that we've seen just now. Still looks small, but it's clever how BMW have really kept the overall shape of the Mini, so you couldn't mistake it for anything else. Ian Preece and the Spider has finished with a 64.4. And here's Chris D. finishing our runners in the New Barn Championship. I think this must be their first of their 12 events that count towards points. But speaking of Alfa Romeo, talking about Italian cars, we've got a feast of Italian cars to follow the Audi TT. So be prepared to feast your eyes on bright red, silver and giallo fly. Here's the first of the runners. It's the S430 of David Snelson. The Audi TT has finished with a 56.11. Wonderful engine, V8 engine, progressively developed to produce more and more power. The V8 always revved like crazy, 8.5 was the red line, but just got more and more capacity, more and more power, 5 valves per cylinder, and a good robust engine. And David Snelson finishes with a 48.84, really good time for the 430. In the meantime, we scroll back a year or two for the 3.5 litre 360 Modena of Richard Preece. I like the silver colour. We get so used to red Ferraris, but it's nice when someone comes with a different colour. Unusual view of the entry into a Torres. Martin Jones runs at Torres. Meanwhile, Richard Preece, in the first of our two 360s, has finished with a time of 53.12. And on the line is Pauline Goodwin in the yellow. Wow, what's happened to Martin? Very slowly rounded Torres. I wonder if he's got a manual gearbox or a two-pedal paddles. Sometimes it's not easy to grab a low gear at Pardon. Anyway, he heads towards the finish. Here's Pauline Goodwin in this beautiful bright yellow Ferrari 328 GTB. The very early 308s were made with fiberglass bodies. They are the rarest of all, although for good reasons. Ferrari then went on to making them with steel bodies. Pauline had a slight brake lock-up on the way into Pardon, but it didn't hamper her turn in, so she avoided the kitty litter. She's followed by Paul Booth on the 458. Here he is. She's finishing any second now in the mid-50s, 55.98. Paul Booth has got the Ferrari 458. The 458 dates from 2012, and our last Ferrari runner is this immaculate 308 GT4 Dino of Ian Atwood. Interesting that the first Dinos, the V6 Dinos, never had a Ferrari badge. Enzo Ferrari was determined that they should celebrate the life of his son Alfredino Dino Ferrari, who died tragically young. So the GT4 of Ewan Atwood records a 55.86, and we advance to Austin Sevens in view of this lovely, very pretty Austin 7 Cowley of Charles Plain Jones. Very low slung Austin 7. Interesting, the Austin 7 engine has a 2-bearing crankshaft, so bearings just at the front and the back, no middle bearing. But of course they weren't designed for racing, they were revolutionary when Herbert Austin produced the Austin 7 as the first really mini car, as opposed to the cycle cars that were so popular after World War I. Little GNs with belt drive and V-twins sticking out at the front, but Austin said, no, let's have a little civilized car with 4 cylinders and water-cooled, and here it is. Charles Plain Jones kicked us off the Austin 7s with a 68.49. Here's Julia Wolstenholme. I hope she doesn't have the same adventure this time as she did last time in Pardon. She managed to get 2 wheels off the ground. No, perfect. And Steve Smallman has finished with a 77.97. So she heads towards the finish and is followed by Peter Howard in the Austin 7 Ulster. Rounding Orchard at 43 miles an hour. We're not going to see the big racing cars again until tomorrow, when hopefully we'll have plenty of speeds under the bridge, well over the ton. So Peter Howard nearing the top. If you look in the distance, you might see Paul Gearing appearing in the Pigsty Special, rounding Orchard. No, we probably won't. Yeah, here it comes. But here he is in the Pigsty. Why Pigsty? If you just tuned in, because the chassis, the Austin 7 chassis of this car was discovered propping up the roof of a pigsty. Which seems a bit insulting use for your classic Austin 7, but nevertheless the result is this pretty little Austin 7 Special of Paul Gearing. Peter Howard's finished with a 70.85, and Julia had an undramatic run to record a 71.99. Our penultimate runner in the Austin 7s, no, we've got 2 more to come, is Paul Gearing. No, Paul Gearing's in the Pigsty, he's nearly finishing. Gerald Mullard in the red Hamlin-bodied Austin, who won the championship last year. And the trophy is a miniature version of the cup that Bert Hadley received for, I think, for a race at Brooklands, but I'll check that out. But anyway, Gerald has got the miniature, and he says it's lovely. Seater Austin 7s, the works Austin 7s, and oh, I've missed someone going off. That's Gerald Millard going off in the Hamlin. The rescue team automatically go up to the scene of the departure, including the ambulance. It's nothing ominous. The ambulance always goes up, just so it's there for very rare occasions that it's needed. But I think Gerald Mullard in the Austin 7 seems to have gone up the bank a little bit out of S's, but I will let you know how things are as soon as I get official word. I was talking about Bert Hadley. He raced pre-war in the works single-seaters, first of all with the side valve engine and then the famous twin-cam single-seaters. And not many people know that Bert was lent to ERA for 1939 for the 1939 Donington Grand Prix, which was a great honour to be offered the chance of a works drive by ERA. But sadly, of course, in 1939 the Donington GP got cancelled. He raced post-war as well. Bert did. He raced at Le Mans in 1950 in an XK120 Jaguar with Leslie Johnson, and they were lying third until, tragically, the clutch went in the last hour. So they 23 hours they were up to third place. Also, I don't know whether it was when he was still employed at Austin, but he was involved in the development of the Jowett Javelin and the Jowett Jupiter up in Bradford. And then I don't know if you remember, but there was a record broken by the XK120 Coupe, bronze-coloured, which raced non-stop for 7 days and nights at Montlhéry in France, with Sterling Moss, Leslie Johnson, Jack Fairman, and Bert Hadley. And they broke the 24-hour record. He raced an Austin Healey in the Targa Florio. He raced a Nash Healey at Le Mans, and he raced a TR2 at the disastrous Le Mans of 1955. And he lived well. He died finally in July 1993, but he was a great character. There's one story that maybe he wouldn't want me to tell you, but I will anyway. He was competing at Shelsley Walsh in the Works Austin 7 at the first hill climb there that was broadcast by the BBC worldwide. The program went right round the world, and Bert was racing the Austin 7, and the commentator said, "Here comes Hadley in the Austin 7," and Bert went swooping into the bottom S at bottom S and promptly spun it and stopped in the middle of the road. And in the silence that followed, there was a very loud Anglo-Saxon four-letter word from Bert, which was broadcast around the world, much to the embarrassment of the BBC. We've got a runoff for the bikes. Top 10 runoff. And if you've got a pen and paper and want to take a note of who's going to be engaged in the runoff, I can tell you that it first up will be Simon and Jane Foster on the trike. Then it'll be number 508 Mark Short. Let me quickly find the bike entries. So second up will be Mark Short. And he, of course, is on the 500cc KTM. He's followed by Alan Jolly on the 1200 KTM. Then Matthew Mogridge on the 1 litre Suzuki. He's followed by Patrick Dolan on the Honda CR, the 500cc Honda. Then will be George Hodges, number 558. So where's George? He's on the Team GV 450cc. Glyn Poole was fourth fastest on his new big KTM. Multiple record holder. He qualified for the runoff with a 48.91. Third qualifier was M6 Jamie Mitchell, and Jamie is on the little 500cc Truro. I'm not sure that, no, I beg, he's from Truro, and the bike is a BRC, and he qualified with a 48.39. Qualified second was Tommy Hodges, and Tommy, as we know, is on the Team GV KTM, and then sensationally, quickest qualifier with a 45.94 is Tom Short. And Tom Short, of course, was our champion last year, and he's on the 653cc KTM. So they will be coming out when we've completed the Austin Sevens of the Burt Hadley Championship. Tomorrow we're live streaming again from 10:30 in the morning, which means that we'll get all the runners in the Midland Hill Climb Championship, all the classes. We've got 2 runoffs, top 12 runoff, and the first of those takes place at 12:52, and then a treat in the form of our Bugattis. I think we've got 4 Bugattis entered, and they have 2 practice runs just before lunch and then 2 competition runs just after lunch. And I can tell you that we've got a Type 43, we've got 2 Type 51 Bugattis, and if you're a Bugatti enthusiast, even better, and getting your mouth watering, will be the Type 59. So a wonderful quartet of Bugattis just before and just after lunch. Then we go through the afternoon with the Hennies Cider Championship. That's not a cider drinking championship, that's a championship for classic cars sponsored by Hennies Cider. We then have the second competitive runs of all the runners in the Midland Championship. Then we get the second competitive runs of the competitors in the Hennies Classic Championship. And then the climax of the day is our top 10 runoff of Midland Hill Climb Championship runners. And as you know, if you've been glued to the telly this afternoon, we've got virtually all the top runners. Sadly, we haven't got Wallace Minges, who won the championship. He's stuck up in Scotland, but we've got all the top runners. So with the likes of Sean Gould, with Alex Summers, we've got Scott Moran, we've got Graham Wynne, we've got them all, and it means that that should be a spectacularly quick top 10 runoff to round off the day. Thanks for your messages, great footage today, thanks for that. Anna, thank you, wish we were there too. Sat in the sun, well that's alright, with a G&T in hand. Some people get lucky at Pembrey with the motorhome. Yeah, hopefully be there soon. We look forward to seeing you, particularly if you bring a G&T in hand. If you've just switched on, we have got a red flag on the hill because one of our competitors in the Austin 7 Burt Hadley Championship had an excursion just between the S's and the semicircle. I will let you know how both car and driver are when I get official word. In the meantime, we're getting nice views of Prescott in the sun. It's going to be a bit cooler tomorrow, apparently, but dry, and that's a great thing. Ha! We caught a glimpse of the old commentator's hut. There it is, and I'm very pleased to tell you that that is very shortly to be pulled down and replaced with a better one. And I don't know if Rich is pointing at Orchard because that's where the new... No, I think the new commentary hut is going to be pretty much up where the old one was. The Hamlin-bodied Austin 7 has been moved, taken up to the top of the hill, and will be returning. I think pretty soon we'll be back in action. So we've got some practice runs times on the screen. Good time from John Maycock in the MX-5, 48.45. I think these are people who practiced this morning, so we haven't seen them on the screen. Yes, they are, including, as you can see, Andrew Russell with the famous orange Ginetta G15. 50.27, good time for the Ginetta. And we've got Mike Turpin here in the amazing Vauxhall VX220. Wildly fast car. Paul Howells in an immensely quick Porsche 911 RSR. Wow, 45.23 for a Subaru Legacy and 47.51 Mitsubishi Evo 6. Wild. Our runners, these are the runners in the Midland Championship who were practicing, had their 2 practice runs this morning. Ash Mason in his amazing 1300cc Westfield, 42.68. Simon Jenks, it's all, that class is all Caterhams and Westfields. Some with bike engines, some with car engines. 2 runners in the Sports Libre class of the Midland Championship. Class sponsored by Vanity Hall, Will Hall's company. Will Hall, of course, driving in the big racing car class. Now, what's Roger Moran, ex-Hill Climb champion in a Skoda RS 1600? Mike Manning in a Ford Fiesta, Graham Lokes, all well-known and highly experienced hill climbers. Nigel Hinton's NGTD, you'll have seen that many times here at Prescott, gold-coloured NG, not an MG, NG. Racing cars up. This is the Tiddlers. It's nice to have the little 600cc, sponsored by Equinox. Richard Walker's the quickest with a 46.93. I don't know why Chris Howard Harris only had one practice run, a 56.25, maybe mechanical gremlins intruded. Up to 1100cc class I. Very good run by Adam Green, and look at that, in the 30s, 39.94. Nice squadron of Formula Fords with Stephen Day quickest in the Swift Cooper, sponsored by Cottrell, and then up to 1600. These guys we've seen today, this afternoon on screen. David Warburton is the quickest in the little GR59 with a 38.62. Good time. Nice to see Bill Chaplin competing. He's busy building the Empire racing cars. Usually he comes to the meetings to look after his customers, but he's grabbed the wheel. Andrew Henson only got 1 run in the Vauxhall powered Delara. Mike Tregoning was pretty quick in the Ford Duratec powered Pilbeam MP88. Tricia Davis. What happened? Terry Davis did a 44.14. Tricia did a 45.54. So she's doing the washing up this evening. Kevin Craven in the interesting Swallow. And then the big racing cars. Look at this. Some of these times. Richard in the GWR Raptor 38.83. Simon Moyes in, new to him, the Gould GR59. Good run, 39.16. Paul Hames, I'm sorry to say, I think he dropped a valve, but I don't think he'll be running. 2 runners in the blown, and then the over 2 litres. This is where the really quick cars are. Alex did a 37.2. Remember, the record is 35.41. He was closely followed by Trevor Willis, triple champion in the OMS 28, without as much power as Alex has got in the DJ, but 37.47. Nice to see David Uren here in the GR55, 38.3. Scott Moran, first serious run in the GR59 that he's sharing with Graham Wynne, recorded a 38.38. Sean, our record holder, was taking it very easy today, sensibly, to record a 38.94. No point in going crazy on practice day. There's Will in the Force with the X-Tech engine, the AER engine, 39.22. Graham Wynne, I think he got the GR59 for the 2020 season, so of course he had very little running in it. And let's hope he gets a proper full season this year, but recorded a 40.2. But it's going to be really interesting to see him and Scotty Moran sharing that car. Simon Andrews in the 2.8 litre OMS 28, 41.45, good start. Bernard Kevell is always competitive, 41.68. Steve Owen, Mr. OMS, 41.92, so nobody going completely crazy today. Jack Cottrell in, new to him, the Dallara with the V8 engine in the back, and then classic racing cars and sports racing cars, just 2 cars, 3 drivers. The Brabham BT30X of Andy Tippett and the beautiful B19 Chevron shared by father and daughter, Richard and Amanda George. At the moment, Richard is by a whisker the quickest. So our ambulance is back in place. We've got 3 more Austin 7 runners to come, and then we have our bike runoff. Thanks for your messages. Great coverage, guys. Looking forward to competing there in June. Well, we look forward to that as well. Hope you will be able to watch again tomorrow. We're on air, live streaming from 10:30 all through the rest of the day. So we got fantastic competition here tomorrow in a great mix of cars from Bugattis right up to our latest top class hill climbing cars. So we're heading towards our top 10 runoff for the bikes. We've got 3 more Austin 7s to have their second runs. The first of which is Douglas Alderson on his Austin 7. He's number 66. Special bodied, nice, neat aluminium body. And he'll be followed by Graham Beckett on the Austin 7 Ulster. And it should be the little rear-engined Austin 7 finishing our 4-wheel action today, but I don't at the moment see a sign of it. But in the meantime, Douglas Alderson brings, very smart, alley-bodied Austin 7 to the line. Car that dates from 1937. Not that Austin 7's changed all that much from when they started. I think they started with a 3-speed gearbox and ended with a 4-speed, but mechanically not much changed. But the bodywork gradually was developed. I think the last one was the Austin Ruby Saloon of just in the late 30s. But here's Douglas Alderson rounding bridge at 39. Bonnet strapped to stop things flying around. I don't know if it's a home-built body, but it's very attractive. Nicely done. We have got the rear engine car coming. Slight pause by Douglas to probably grab bottom gear out of Pardon. Might have cost him half a second or so. Graham Beckett has left the line. You'll see him in the distance pretty soon coming around Orchard. Meantime, Douglas Alderson heads towards semicircle. Here is Graham, original bodied. This is the classic Austin Ulster with its pointed tail. They were incredibly popular, and there was brilliant racing at places like Brooklands between the Austin 7s and the little early MG midgets, the M-type and the C-type and the J2 Austin, MG midgets. My dad competed at Brooklands in an Austin 7 and then various other things. Lots of fun for not a huge amount of money. Nick Allen is coming. Here he is. Now that's really quick round bridge with his wide front track, narrow rear track, so probably no differential at the back. I don't think you have to have a differential. You have to have original Austin 7 rear springs, but front suspension is free. But it was Nick who had the idea, and I think he's the only person who's done it, of having a standard Austin 7 chassis, turning it around the other way and having the engine at the back. So nowhere in the rules does it say your chassis has to go forward. You can have it going backwards. We got a time for Douglas Alderson, 74.59, a time for Graham Beckett of 67.10, and Nick Allen has just finished with a 57.99. And I can see our bikes lining up at the hill gate to compete in their top 10 runoff. And one of our traditions here is that our fastest runner has a tour d'honneur, in other words, a climb up the hill to wave to the non-existent spectators, but I am not sure whether that's a bike or a car. We shall see, but that takes place when the bikes have had their runoff. First runners in the runoff are Simon and Jane Foster. Simon and Jane, if you've just switched on, are on a trike, a three-wheeler Honda F2 with a 600cc Honda engine, with Simon driving and Jane doing the acrobatics to keep the thing on the ground. They qualified with a time of 51.3, and here they come up to the line. They don't have a timing strut, which is interesting, so instead that portable strut with the horizontal rod is at the height of the beam, so that's where they line up. Bright red, bright orange coloured. You'd think it was a KTM, but it's not. It's a Honda F2. It's an F2 with a Honda engine. Hang on tight, Jane. She does. And a nice start in 2.69. 59 under the bridge. Jane jumps over from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, leans as far out to the right as she can, and then you'll see her grabbing the grab handle and sticking as much of herself as she can right over to the left. Keep away from the Armco, Simon. They qualified with a 51.3. Hugging the apex at semicircle. 51.9. Not quite as quick as their qualifying run, but a good run anyway. They're followed by Mark Short. And Mark qualified with a 51.1. He's on the KTM with a long travel suspension. Good start, 2.2. That's really good. Round Orchard at 62. Tentative boot down just to, and again it always does that little wheelie hop, accelerating out of Ettores. His qualifying time was a 51.1. Looks as if he's a little bit down at the midway marker, but he's up again at the S's. So can he get in the 50s? I bet he would like to. He doesn't quite. 51.02. 51.02 for Mark. Next up, Alan Jolly. Big bike. This is the 1200cc KTM. Space frame, as it were. Again, long travel suspension. I don't think he clicks the front suspension right down, but you can do that. We'll watch and see how many people do that. Alan was in the 50s with a 50.92 first run. Nice boom from the big KTM engine. Really quick start, 2.14. 62 rounds Orchard, hugging the inside verge. Correct. Oh, I wasn't going to say that, was I, anymore? The late entry into Ettores, and another little hop. Mini wheelie as the power goes down out of Ettores. Beautifully round Pardon. Alan would be very pleased to have another run in the 50s. .98 at the split at the S's. 51.82. Interesting. Times are a bit slower than in their first two competitive runs. Matthew Mogridge on the line, and Matthew of course is in the big Suzuki 1080cc Suzuki. I think he did click the front suspension down, but a very good 64 feet. Not quite so quick round Orchard. Gets a little wiggle on from a locked rear brake on the way into Ettores, which will annoy him. That probably cost him maybe a couple of tenths, maybe slightly more. But it's very difficult to get your braking right. You don't want too much front brake, otherwise the thing plows straight on. Fierce acceleration up to semicircle. We'll get a head-on view in just a second. Here it is. Qualified with a 50.62. No, that cost him more than he wanted at Ettores. He won't be happy with that. 53.29. Now, who's next? It's Patrick Dolan. And Patrick is on the Honda CR 500cc Honda. But he's quick round Orchard 66. Gets his braking right for Ettores. Keeps the front wheel pretty much on the ground, accelerating towards Pardon. It's a fairly wide entry into Pardon and a wide exit to keep the speed up, keep the momentum up. Into Tom Rote corner. We always call it the S's, but actually officially it's named after the famous engineer Tom Rote. Patrick Dolan on the way to the finish. He qualified with a 50.29, not quite as quick, but 50.43 puts him top of the leaderboard at the moment. George Hodges, Team GV CRF. Rapidly off the line, 2.07. That's the quickest 64 feet we've had in this runoff. Now Patrick qualified, George, I beg his pardon, qualified in the 40s with a 49.18. So this is a quick bike and rider combination. Long travel front suspension, really extends the forks on the way on acceleration. So his time is up, he's 0.71 up on the Patrick Dolan time so far. Very quickly round S's, fierce acceleration. Let's see the head-on view at semicircle. It's good, it's a 48.55. Excellent for George. Pops him into first place, and on the line we've got the KTM. We've got Glyn Poole on the KTM. Triple record holder, rapid bike, rapid driver, bit of a wheelie. What can Glyn do? Well, 900ths slower offline, won't make much of a difference. Quickly make up the time, apply the power, and then late braking for Pardon. Bike is road registered, be fun on the road. It isn't a headlight, it was the sun shining, reflecting off the front number. He's slightly down at the S's, he's slightly down at semi. Can he make it up on the run to the finish? Not quite, 48.98. Puts Glyn in second place. Jamie Mitchell comes next. Jamie on the little 500 BRC, qualified with a 48.39. So that would, if he repeats that, it'll put him at the top of the field. And he's going for it. 68 round Ettores. Long travel suspension, didn't lift the front wheel, hugs the inside at Pardon. He's half a second up at the midway mark. He's more than half a second up at the S's. This will be a quick run. Remember, he's chasing 48.55. Can he do it? Last corner and up to the finish. Yes, 48.18. Jamie pops his bike into top place with a 48.18. Bit quicker than his quickest qualifying run. Now, Tommy Hodges qualified with a 48.39. He's got 48.18 to beat. Well, he's quickest off the line so far. And he again is doing 68 round. Orchard gets his braking. Yeah, last second braking, gets it right. Wheelie down the little slope and late braking into Entoris. Hugs the inside curb at Entoris. He's up by 3/10. Down, not down, but his lead has dropped to 0.23, but up again in the S's. This should pop Tommy at the top of the tree. Let's see, 48.18, 47.42, excellent. So Tommy's definitely on the podium with a 47.42. What can our quickest runner do? Tom qualified with a 45.94. So if he repeats something like that, he's way in front. He carries the number one, so he won the championship last year. Can he beat 68 round Orchard? 73! Wow. This is quick. Oh, hangs! No! That's late braking, too late braking, into the kitty litter. No harm done, but cross. Dropped it slightly, but I think both rider and bike are okay. Lifted out of the gravel. Yeah, he's just angry with himself. Bad luck, Tom. Gilles Villeneuve said, if you ain't crashing, you ain't trying. So it's how you find the limit. Yeah, ambulance arrives and isn't needed, I don't think. I think Tom's okay. Might be swearing a bit. So here's our runoff, won by Tommy Hodges with a time of 47.42. Second, Jamie Mitchell, 48.18. Third, George Hodges, 48.55. Fourth, Glyn Poole, 49.98. Fifth, Patrick Dolan, 50.43. Sixth, Mark Short, 51.02. Seventh, Alan Jolly, 51.82. Eighth, Simon and Jane Foster on the trike, 51.9. And ninth, Matthew Mogridge with a 53.81. Sadly, Tom Short didn't complete the run. So congratulations to Tommy. We have a Tour d'Honneur, and it's a toss-up whether it's our fastest car or our fastest bike. So because we couldn't decide whether to have a bike or a car, we're not having either. So we're not having a Tour d'Honneur. There's no point actually when you haven't got spectators. Who would you wave to? So it's been a great day at Prescott. Very few excursions. I think pretty much no harm done. Thank you to all sorts of people. Thank you to, as always, to our marshals who, as ever, do a brilliant job keeping the thing under control. Thank you to our team in the office who've worked like crazy to organize the runners and entrants and all the negotiating that has to be done. Thank you to our ground staff who keep Prescott looking immaculate, and to our timing team on the start line. We're back again tomorrow. In reality, we kick off quite early at something like 8:30, but in fact we are live streaming from 10:30. But it means that you won't miss all the runners in the Midland Hill Climb Championship. Thank you for watching. Do watch again tomorrow. Thank you for people who've sent in comments. It's always nice to see. We don't mind criticism, but we do love compliments. This is Chris Druitt saying thanks for watching. Talk to you tomorrow. Good night.